Before the marriage. Before the shared roof. Before the tension that would eventually swallow them whole. They were just professor and student at the university. Professor Evelyn Vance walked like she owned silence. Her heels didn't echo loudly, they commanded space. Conversations softened when she passed. Phones lowered. Posture straightened. She never raised her voice in class. She never needed to. Deadlines, she would say evenly, writing on the board, are not suggestions. Students scribbled faster. In the third row sat Riley Chin. She wasn't intimidated, but she was attentive. Riley liked structure. Liked sharp minds. Liked the way Professor Vance never wasted words. It felt efficient. Clean. Nothing more. When class ended, Riley left with her friends, laughing, arguing about assignments, planning cafe visits. When class ended, Evelyn disappeared into faculty meetings and private calls no student ever heard about. They existed in the same building, but in entirely different worlds. The proposal came through families. Business alliances disguised as mutual benefit. Stability dressed as tradition. Evelyn agreed because she always fulfilled responsibility before desire. Riley agreed because saying no would fracture more than she was prepared to handle. The wedding was tasteful, controlled, elegant. They stood beside each other like two well-trained individuals performing a role flawlessly. It was only when the formalities ended, when the guests thinned and the doors closed, that reality arrived. Riley removed her jewelry slowly, finally lifting her gaze properly, and froze. Professor Evelyn Vance stood across the room, removing her cuff links. They stared. Recognition hit at the same time. You. The silence swallowed the rest. The air didn't explode. It tightened. Evelyn recovered first. Of course she did. This arrangement, she said calmly, though her jaw was rigid, was finalized without academic disclosure. Riley let out a small, disbelieving breath. You didn't know? No. Neither did she. A strange relief passed between them, followed immediately by something heavier. This wasn't just marriage. It was conflict. Power imbalance. Reputation risk. Scandal waiting to happen if mishandled. Evelyn straightened. At university, nothing changes. Riley nodded. Professional first. Always. They chose separate bedrooms. Not out of hostility, out of safety. At campus, Professor Vance became even more composed. No lingering looks. No softened tone. If anything, she was stricter with Riley than before. Miss Chin, she said during a lecture one morning. Answer. Riley stood smoothly and answered without hesitation. Their eyes met for only seconds. Sharp. Controlled. A classmate later whispered, she grills you more than anyone. Riley only smiled faintly. I can handle it. At home, they passed each other politely. Dinner is on the table. Thank you. If you need the study room, inform me. Of course. They were roommates bound by legality. Nothing more. Or at least, that's what they told themselves. The first crack in composure came from outside. A week later, Evelyn attended a casual dinner with her childhood friends. They already knew she had married. They assumed it was a strategic match, a mature partner, someone fitting her image. Halfway through the meal, one friend smirked. So what's she like? Evelyn hesitated. That alone made them lean in. She is a student at my university. Silence. Then explosive laughter. You married your own student? Professor, is this part of curriculum reform? Who does homework at home? Evelyn's usually unshakable expression faltered. It was arranged, she said firmly. I did not know before the marriage. The teasing softened. One friend's tone changed. You need to protect her. If anyone finds out. I know. Another friend studied her face carefully. Are you happy? Evelyn opened her mouth, closed it. I don't know yet, she admitted quietly. And that truth unsettled her more than the jokes. Days passed. Routine settled. Until one afternoon after class, a female student lingered at Evelyn's desk. Professor, I'm still confused about the case study. Her tone was light, slightly too warm. Riley watched from her seat while pretending to organize her bag. Evelyn explained efficiently, no unnecessary softness. But the student leaned closer anyway. Riley felt something unfamiliar twist in her chest. Not ownership. Not yet. Just awareness. That night at home, Riley spoke first. You stayed late today. Evelyn looked up from her laptop. Academic doubt. I see. A pause. Then Evelyn added, you left before I finished class. You seemed busy. Their eyes met. Something unspoken hovered. Fragile. New. They both looked away at the same time. The house was quiet that night. 2 separate bedrooms. 2 restless minds. Evelyn lay awake longer than usual. She had handled corporate negotiations more complicated than this. But this was personal. And she didn't know the rules. Across the hall, Riley stared at her ceiling. She replayed the classroom scene, the way Professor Vance had remained composed, the way it bothered her anyway. She turned onto her side. This marriage had started as obligation. But something subtle was shifting. Not dramatic. Not romantic. Just small changes in breathing when the other entered a room. Just slight tension when someone else stood too close. And neither of them was ready to name it. The message from Evelyn's mother arrived on a quiet Thursday evening. We'll visit this weekend. No warning. No discussion. Just information. At dinner, the house was silent except for the faint clink of utensils. Evelyn read the message twice before setting her phone down. They're coming, she said. Across the table, Riley looked up. Who? Our families. Riley blinked. Both? Yes. A long pause followed. They both understood the implication immediately. Separate bedrooms would not survive parental inspection. Saturday morning arrived too quickly. Suitcases rolled across the polished floor as relatives filled the house with noise and casual affection. Evelyn's mother hugged Riley warmly. You look thinner, she said, already concerned. Is she not feeding you properly? Riley smiled politely. She takes good care of me. Across the room, Evelyn nearly choked on her coffee. Her friends would never let her live that sentence down. By evening, the inevitable happened. Evelyn's mother walked down the hallway, opening doors casually. This room is beautiful, she commented, stepping into Riley's bedroom. Riley felt Evelyn stiffen beside her. Actually, Evelyn said smoothly, Riley recently moved into my room. We're reorganizing the house. Her mother's face brightened instantly. Good. Married couples shouldn't sleep apart. Riley forced a calm smile while her heartbeat climbed into her throat. That night, for the first time, they shared the same room. Not by choice. By necessity. The room felt different with another person inside it. Riley sat on the edge of the bed, awkwardly folding her clothes. Evelyn worked at the desk, pretending the situation was entirely normal. Neither mentioned the obvious. Eventually, Riley spoke first. I can sleep on the couch. Evelyn looked up immediately. No. It's your room. It's our room right now. The words hung strangely between them. After a moment, Evelyn sighed and closed her laptop. We'll manage. The bed was large enough. Still, they lay on opposite edges, like cautious diplomats respecting borders. In the darkness, Riley could hear Evelyn typing messages on her phone. Work. Always work. Morning arrived early. Evelyn was already dressed when Riley woke up. You have class at 9, Evelyn said. Riley rubbed her eyes. I usually take the bus. Not today. Riley frowned. Why? Evelyn picked up her car keys. Because my mother is watching. The drive to campus was quiet. Students walked along the main road as the car slowed near the gate. Riley felt suddenly hyper-aware of everything. People could see them. Professor Vance's car. Professor Vance driving. Professor Vance dropping a student. Stop here, Riley said quickly. Evelyn pulled over. Riley reached for the door handle but hesitated. Thank you, she said softly. Evelyn nodded once. Don't be late for class. Riley stepped out, closing the door carefully. The car drove away immediately. But someone had already seen. Near the gate, Riley's best friend stared in disbelief. Was that? Riley froze. You just got dropped off by Professor Vance. It's not what you think. Then explain. The cafe across the street became their emergency meeting place. Riley wrapped both hands around her drink. She's my wife. The words felt unreal even now. Her friend blinked twice. You're serious? Yes. You're telling me your professor is your actual wife? Yes. How is that even legal? Riley groaned softly. It was arranged. Her friend leaned back, stunned. So you live together? Yes. And she drops you at college? Only when my mother is watching, Riley muttered. But even as she said it, she knew something had shifted. Because Evelyn hadn't sounded reluctant. Just careful. Meanwhile, at the university parking lot, Evelyn sat inside her car for a moment longer than necessary. Dropping Riley at the gate felt strangely domestic. Like something ordinary married couples did. That thought unsettled her more than she expected. She shook it off and headed to her lecture hall. Back home that evening, the house was full again. Parents talking. Dinner preparation. Laughter. Riley entered the kitchen quietly and stopped. Evelyn stood at the counter, packing something into a small container. You skipped lunch yesterday, Evelyn said without looking at her. Riley blinked. You noticed? Evelyn closed the lid neatly. You had a long schedule. She placed the lunchbox on the table. For tomorrow. Riley stared at it. It was such a simple gesture. But it didn't feel like obligation. It felt attentive. The shared room slowly stopped feeling temporary. Night after night, they fell into an unspoken rhythm. Evelyn working late at her desk. Riley reading or scrolling through her phone on the bed. Sometimes silence stretched comfortably. Sometimes it felt heavy. One night around midnight, Riley glanced toward the desk. Evelyn was still working, her shoulders tense, eyes tired. You should sleep, Riley said. I will. You said that 2 hours ago. Evelyn didn't answer. A few minutes later, her typing slowed. Then stopped. Riley looked up again. Evelyn had leaned back in her chair, eyes closed. Asleep. Riley hesitated, then stood quietly. She placed a glass of water beside Evelyn's bed and gently draped a blanket over her shoulders. Evelyn stirred slightly but didn't wake. Riley returned to bed, her chest feeling strangely warm. Concern had appeared before love, and neither of them had planned for it. Outside the room, their families believed they were happily adjusting to married life. Inside the room, two strangers were slowly learning each other's quiet habits. The way Evelyn overworked herself. The way Riley stayed awake later than she admitted. The way small gestures began appearing without discussion. Nothing dramatic had happened. No confessions. No romance. But something subtle had begun forming between them. Something neither professor nor student could fully control anymore. And neither of them had noticed yet that returning to separate rooms later might not feel natural anymore. The routine settled quietly after the family visit. To everyone else, nothing had changed. At university, Evelyn remained the same composed professor, precise, distant, controlled. At home, she was still careful, still reserved. But to Riley, The difference was noticeable now. Not dramatic. Just small things. A lunchbox waiting on the kitchen counter in the morning. A short text during the day, "Did you eat?" Or Evelyn waiting in the living room when Riley returned late from campus. Nothing romantic. Just attentive. And somehow that made everything more complicated. One afternoon at the university, Riley arrived early for class. Students were already chatting inside the lecture hall. She took her usual seat in the third row and opened her notebook. Then she noticed something strange. Near the professor's desk stood a student from another department. A girl Riley had seen before, confident, stylish, the type who enjoyed attention. She was leaning casually against Evelyn's desk. "Professor, I'm still confused about the research proposal," the girl said. Her voice carried just enough sweetness to make it noticeable. Evelyn stood beside the desk, reviewing a document. "If you have academic questions," she replied calmly, "submit them through email. But it's easier to understand when you explain it." Riley watched silently. The girl leaned closer, just slightly. Close enough that the gesture looked intentional. Most professors would step back. Evelyn didn't. She simply continued explaining the concept in the same neutral tone. But Riley suddenly found herself gripping her pen harder than necessary. She didn't know why it bothered her. Evelyn wasn't doing anything inappropriate. She was just teaching. Still, the girl laughed softly at something Evelyn said. Riley's jaw tightened. When class started, the girl finally left. Evelyn began the lecture as usual. "Today we'll review the case analysis." Her voice was steady, professional. Yet halfway through the lecture, her gaze shifted briefly toward Riley. Just a second. But it felt like she had noticed something. Riley immediately looked down at her notes. Later that afternoon, Riley walked out of the classroom with her friends. The same girl from earlier passed by them in the hallway. "Professor Vance is really patient," the girl commented casually. Riley forced a polite smile. "Yes, she's very professional." "Lucky you," the girl said lightly. "You get to take more classes with her." Riley didn't reply. She just kept walking. That evening when Riley returned home, the house was quiet again. The families had already left earlier that week. Yet they hadn't returned to separate rooms. No one had suggested it. And somehow it felt easier not to mention it. Evelyn was sitting at the desk again, laptop open, glasses resting low on her nose. She looked tired. "You're late," Evelyn said without looking up. "Group project meeting." Riley placed her bag on the chair and hesitated. Then she spoke casually. "You had a student asking questions before class today." Evelyn paused. "Yes." She seemed persistent. Now Evelyn looked up. Her expression was unreadable. "That happens," she said. Riley nodded slowly. "Of course." The conversation ended there. But something had shifted. Later that night, Riley stepped out onto the balcony to get some air. The evening breeze cooled her face. She didn't hear the door open behind her until Evelyn spoke. "You're quieter than usual tonight." Riley leaned against the railing. "Am I?" "Yes." Evelyn stepped beside her. For a moment, they simply stood there, watching the city lights. Then Riley said, almost absent-mindedly, "That student today seems to admire you." Evelyn's brow lifted slightly. "I'm a professor. Students often admire teachers." Riley exhaled softly. "I guess." Another pause. Evelyn turned toward her. "Did that bother you?" Riley blinked. "What?" "You noticed her several times." Riley looked away immediately. "It's none of my business." "But you're my wife." The sentence came out before Evelyn could stop herself. Both of them froze. The word hung in the air between them. Wife. Riley slowly turned back toward her. "Only legally," she said quietly. Evelyn's gaze softened. "Yes," she admitted. but neither of them stepped away. The distance between them felt suddenly smaller. Too small. Riley's hair moved slightly in the breeze, brushing across her cheek. Without thinking, Evelyn reached out. Her fingers gently caught the strand of hair and tucked it behind Riley's ear. The touch was light, careful, but it lingered. Riley's breath hitched. Their eyes met. Neither of them moved. The city noise faded into the background. Evelyn realized suddenly how close they were standing. Close enough to feel each other's breath. Close enough that if either of them leaned forward, Riley swallowed. Evelyn. It was the first time she had said her name. Not Professor. Just Evelyn. Something in Evelyn's chest tightened. Her hand was still resting lightly against Riley's cheek. For one brief second, the thought crossed both their minds. What if they kissed? The possibility was terrifying. And strangely tempting. Evelyn's gaze dropped briefly to Riley's lips. Riley noticed. Her heartbeat jumped. But the moment became too real. Too dangerous. They stepped back at the same time, both embarrassed. Riley laughed softly, covering her face. That was awkward. Evelyn cleared her throat. Yes. A long pause followed. Neither knew where to look. Finally, Riley said, "We should probably sleep." Probably. Evelyn agreed. They walked back inside the room quietly. Nothing more happened that night. But when the lights were turned off and they lay on opposite sides of the bed, neither of them fell asleep quickly. Because something had changed again. Jealousy had appeared. And so had something else. Something that felt a lot like the beginning of desire. The days after the almost kiss became strangely quiet. Not awkward exactly. Just careful. At university, Evelyn returned to her usual composed self. Her lectures were sharp, structured, efficient. No one in class would ever guess she had nearly crossed the boundary on her own balcony a few nights earlier. Not even Riley. Or at least, that's what they pretended. Riley sat in her usual seat in the third row, writing notes, occasionally glancing toward the front of the classroom. Whenever their eyes met, both looked away first. It was subtle, but noticeable, at least to them. That evening, Evelyn met her childhood friends for dinner again. The moment she sat down, one of them grinned. "Professor is here." Another leaned forward dramatically. "So how's married life with your student?" Evelyn exhaled slowly. "You all promised to stop bringing that up." "We didn't," her friend laughed. Another added, "Tell us something honestly. Do you still call her Miss Chin at home?" Evelyn pressed her fingers against her temple. "You're impossible." "Come on," one friend teased. "You married someone 10 years younger. Your own student." "That's legendary." Evelyn didn't respond immediately. Instead, she picked up her glass and took a slow sip. Her friends noticed the pause. One of them narrowed her eyes slightly. "Wait. Something changed." Another friend leaned closer. "You like her?" Evelyn almost choked. "That is not what I said." "You didn't have to." Evelyn shook her head. "It's complicated." "That means yes." Their laughter softened this time. The teasing wasn't cruel, it was curious. One friend finally asked gently, "Is she good to you?" Evelyn thought about the lunchbox incident. The glass of water beside her bed. The way Riley had stayed awake the night she worked late. Her voice lowered slightly. "Yes." Her friends exchanged looks. Then one of them smirked again. "Careful, Professor. You're falling." Evelyn didn't answer. But for the first time, the idea didn't sound impossible. Back at home that night, Riley was sitting on the bed reading when Evelyn entered the room. "You're late," Riley said automatically. "Dinner with friends." Riley nodded. She noticed something else too. Evelyn looked exhausted. Not the normal tiredness from teaching, this was deeper. Her shoulders were tense, and she moved slower than usual. You worked again after dinner, didn't you? Riley asked. Evelyn placed her laptop on the desk. There were emails. You said that yesterday and the day before. Evelyn didn't respond. She simply opened the laptop again. Riley watched her for a moment, then sighed softly. You're going to make yourself sick. I'm fine. The typing continued. It happened 2 nights later. Riley woke up around midnight. The light at the desk was still on. Evelyn was still working. Her posture looked strange, slouched forward slightly. Professor? Riley murmured sleepily. No response. Riley sat up. Evelyn. Still nothing. She stood and walked toward the desk. Evelyn's hand was still on the keyboard, but her eyes were closed. Her breathing was shallow. Evelyn. Riley shook her shoulder gently. Evelyn stirred, blinking slowly. I'm awake, she muttered. You almost passed out. I'm just tired. But when Evelyn tried to stand, her balance faltered. Riley immediately caught her arm. Hey, careful. For a moment, Evelyn leaned heavily against her. That had never happened before. Evelyn was always composed, always controlled. Seeing her like this, weak and exhausted, made Riley's chest tighten. You're going to bed, Riley said firmly. I still have work. No. The word came out sharper than expected. Evelyn looked at her surprised. Riley softened slightly. Please. For once. Evelyn didn't argue. Riley guided her to the bed. Evelyn lay down slowly, clearly too tired to protest further. Riley grabbed the glass of water from the bedside table. Drink. Evelyn obeyed. The silence between them felt different tonight. Heavier. More intimate. Riley sat on the edge of the bed, watching her. You do this every night, don't you? She said quietly. Evelyn didn't deny it. I've always worked like this. Well, you can't anymore. Evelyn looked at her. And why not? Riley hesitated, then answered honestly. Because someone should take care of you. The words landed softly. Evelyn studied her face. Since when did you decide that? Riley shrugged slightly. Since you almost collapsed on your laptop. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Evelyn said quietly, You don't have to worry about me. Riley met her gaze. I know. But she didn't look away. Slowly, without thinking, Riley reached forward and brushed a strand of hair away from Evelyn's forehead. The gesture was gentle. Instinctive. Evelyn stilled. Their eyes locked again. This moment felt dangerously similar to the balcony night. Except now they were closer. Much closer. Riley's hand was still resting lightly near Evelyn's temple. Evelyn's breathing slowed. For a brief second, neither of them moved. The tension between them thickened. Riley realized suddenly what she was doing and pulled her hand back quickly. Sorry. Evelyn's voice was softer than usual. Don't apologize. Riley stood abruptly. You should sleep. Evelyn nodded. But before Riley could walk away, Evelyn spoke again. Riley. She turned. Yes. Evelyn hesitated. Then said quietly, Thank you. Riley smiled faintly. Next time, try not to collapse. For the first time in days, Evelyn laughed softly. A small sound, but genuine. Riley turned off the desk lamp and climbed back into bed. The room fell into darkness. Yet the emotional tension between them felt brighter than ever. Because something was happening between them now. Something deeper. And neither of them could stop it anymore. The house was quiet when Riley woke up that morning. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, soft and pale. For a moment, she stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling. Then she remembered something. Last night, the way Evelyn had nearly collapsed from exhaustion. Riley sighed and sat up. She's going to work herself to death, she muttered. In the kitchen, Riley stood staring at the refrigerator like it had personally offended her. Cooking was not exactly her strongest skill, but she had seen Evelyn skip meals too many times. That woman lives on coffee, Riley said to herself. So she started. Eggs. Rice. Something simple. Something edible. After 20 minutes, the kitchen looked slightly chaotic, but the food actually smelled good. Riley packed part of it neatly into a lunchbox. The rest stayed on the table. Right on time, Evelyn entered the kitchen, already dressed for work. She paused. The sight in front of her was unexpected. Food. Prepared food. Riley stood beside the table, holding a spoon like she had just completed a scientific experiment. You cooked? Evelyn asked. Riley shrugged casually. Don't look so surprised. Evelyn walked closer, examining the plate. You didn't burn the kitchen. Very funny. Evelyn tasted a small bite. Riley watched nervously. Well? She asked. Evelyn chewed thoughtfully, then nodded. It's good. Riley blinked. Wait, really? Yes. Riley crossed her arms. I was expecting dramatic praise. You'll get that when you improve further. Riley rolled her eyes, but couldn't hide a small smile. Evelyn closed the lunchbox and picked it up. You made this too? Lunch. Evelyn looked at her for a moment. You didn't have to. I know. But she had done it anyway. A little later, they were in the car again, driving toward the university. This time, it wasn't because family members were watching. Neither of them mentioned that. Riley leaned against the seat, looking out the window. You know, people are going to start noticing this, she said. Evelyn kept her eyes on the road. I'll drop you near the gate. You always say that. And nothing happens. The car stopped near the entrance again. Students walked past in small groups. Riley opened the door. Before stepping out, she said quietly, Don't skip lunch. Evelyn held up the lunchbox slightly. Difficult now. Riley smiled. Then she left. Near the campus gates, Riley's best friend was already waiting. The moment she saw Riley walking from the direction of the professor parking lot, her expression became suspicious. You got dropped off again. Riley groaned. Please don't start. Her friend grabbed her arm dramatically. No, we are definitely starting. They walked toward the cafe across the street. Her friend leaned closer. So tell me something. What do you call her? Professor? At home. Riley almost choked on her drink. No. Her friend laughed loudly. I'm just imagining it. Professor, can you pass the salt? That's not funny. It's hilarious. Riley covered her face. You're impossible. Her friend wasn't finished. So serious question. Riley narrowed her eyes. That usually means something stupid is coming. Her friend grinned. Do professors give extra marks to their wives? Riley nearly threw a napkin at her. Shut up. I'm just asking for academic fairness. Despite herself, Riley started laughing. The situation really did sound ridiculous when someone else said it out loud. Later that afternoon, Riley walked into the faculty building. Students rarely visited professors outside scheduled hours. But today she had an excuse. She knocked on the door. Inside, Evelyn looked up from her desk. Her expression changed slightly. Miss Chin, she said automatically. Riley stepped inside and closed the door behind her. No need to be formal. Evelyn leaned back in her chair. Have it. Riley walked closer, placing a small paper bag on the desk. What's this? Evelyn asked. You forgot your coffee this morning. Evelyn looked genuinely surprised. You came all the way here to bring coffee? You looked half dead earlier. Evelyn opened the bag. The faint smell of fresh coffee filled the room. You're very attentive lately, she said quietly. Riley shrugged. Someone has to keep you alive. Evelyn studied her for a moment, then said softly, thank you. The room fell silent. Riley noticed something on the desk. A stack of papers. Essays. You haven't graded these yet? I will tonight. Riley sighed. You never stop working. Evelyn smiled faintly. And you never stop complaining about it. Riley leaned against the desk slightly. That's because you don't listen. For a moment, their eyes met again. That familiar tension returned. The same kind that had appeared on the balcony and beside the bed. Riley looked away first. I should go, she said. Class? Yes. She turned toward the door. But just before leaving, she paused. Eat your lunch. Evelyn lifted the lunchbox again. Yes, Miss Chin. Riley pointed at her. Don't call me that at home. Evelyn's smile widened slightly. Understood. Riley left the office, closing the door behind her. Evelyn sat there for a moment, staring at the coffee cup. The room felt strangely warmer. She opened the lunchbox slowly. Inside was the same food Riley had made that morning, carefully packed. Evelyn shook her head softly. Unbelievable, she murmured. But she still started eating. And for the first time in a long while, work didn't feel like the only important thing in her life anymore. The house was quiet when Riley returned home that evening. She dropped her bag on the couch and stretched her arms. Professor, she called out automatically. No answer. Riley walked toward the bedroom and stopped at the doorway. Evelyn was sitting at the desk, surrounded by stacks of papers. Student assignments. Her laptop screen glowed faintly in the dim room. Riley leaned against the door frame. You've been here since I left the university, haven't you? Evelyn didn't look up. I had grading to finish. Riley walked inside and glanced at the papers. There are like 50 essays here. 48. That's not better. Evelyn made a small mark on one paper and placed it neatly into a finished pile. You should rest, Riley said. I will. That's what you said yesterday. Evelyn ignored the comment and picked up another essay. Riley stared at her for a moment before sighing. You're impossible. An hour later, the grading was finally finished. Riley was sitting on the bed scrolling through her phone when Evelyn closed the last file. But instead of stopping, Evelyn picked up her phone and walked quietly toward the balcony. Riley barely noticed. She assumed it was just another work call from the university. Outside, Evelyn's voice lowered. Yes, send me the financial reports tomorrow morning. A pause. No, I'll review the contract tonight. Another pause. I don't want delays. The tone was different. Sharp. Confident. Completely unlike the calm professor Riley knew. Inside the room, Riley yawned and stretched. She didn't hear the conversation. To her, Evelyn was still just grading papers. When Evelyn returned inside, Riley immediately noticed the laptop opening again. Oh no. Evelyn looked up. What? You're not starting more work. It's just something small. No. Riley stood up and walked directly to the desk. Then she closed the laptop right in front of Evelyn. Evelyn blinked. Riley, you nearly collapsed 2 days ago. I'm fine. You're not. Evelyn leaned back slightly. You're being dramatic. Riley crossed her arms. You're being stubborn. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then Riley said firmly, You're done working tonight. And what exactly do you suggest I do instead? Riley thought for a second. Then shrugged. Sleep. Evelyn sighed. I'm not tired. Riley looked at her skeptically. You look like you fought a war. Evelyn laughed quietly. That's an exaggeration. Riley studied her face. Dark circles. Tension in her shoulders. You need to move, Riley said suddenly. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Move. Exercise. Something that isn't sitting at a desk. Evelyn considered that. Then she stood up. Fine. Riley blinked. That was easier than I expected. Evelyn picked up a small gym bag from the closet. You're not the first person to tell me I work too much. Riley watched her walk toward the door. Wait, you're going now? Yes. It's almost 9. Evelyn shrugged. The gym is open. Riley sat back on the bed. Well, don't overdo it. Evelyn paused at the door, then gave a small smile. I'll try. About an hour later, Riley was half asleep when the door opened again. She glanced up lazily, then immediately sat up. Evelyn had just returned from the gym. Her hair was slightly damp from sweat. She wore a fitted athletic shirt and black training pants. Riley blinked. She had never seen Evelyn like this before. At home, Evelyn was always in formal clothes, blazers, blouses, professional outfits. But now, the athletic shirt clung lightly to her shoulders and arms. And Riley suddenly realized something she had never noticed before. Evelyn was strong. Not bulky, but toned, defined. The kind of strength that came from discipline. Evelyn walked past her casually, grabbing a towel. I'll take a quick shower. Riley nodded. But her brain had stopped working properly. Her eyes followed Evelyn without permission. This was new. Very new. 20 minutes later, Evelyn came out of the bathroom wearing loose home clothes. Riley was still sitting on the bed. Still strangely quiet. Evelyn noticed immediately. You're staring. Riley blinked quickly. I'm not. You are. Riley looked away. I was just thinking about. She hesitated, then muttered, You look different. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. Different how? Riley immediately regretted opening this topic. Just different. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed. You've seen me every day for months. Yes, but not like this. Evelyn studied her carefully. Like what? Riley waved her hand vaguely. Like, gym version of you. Evelyn laughed softly. Gym version. Riley groaned and covered her face. This conversation is embarrassing. Evelyn's amusement grew. Why? Riley lowered her hand slowly. Because she didn't know how to explain it. How seeing Evelyn like that made her suddenly aware of things she had never noticed before. Things she wasn't ready to admit yet. So she stood up quickly. I'm going to sleep. Evelyn watched her climb under the blanket. Her voice softened slightly. Riley? Yes. Thank you. For what? For making me stop working tonight. Riley turned off the bedside lamp. Don't get used to it. But in the darkness, a small smile appeared on her face. Morning sunlight slipped quietly into the room. For a moment, Riley stayed under the blanket, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed the scene from last night. Evelyn returning from the gym. The damp hair. The fitted shirt. The way her shoulders looked stronger than Riley had ever noticed before. Riley buried her face into the pillow. Why am I thinking about that? She muttered. Across the room, Evelyn was already awake. She stood near the wardrobe, adjusting the sleeve of her blazer. Composed. Professional. As if the slightly flustered version Riley had seen last night never existed. Riley peeked out from the blanket. You wake up too early. Evelyn glanced at her. You wake up too late. Riley groaned. Rude. Evelyn's lips curved slightly. Then she noticed something on the bedside table. A glass of water. Riley must have placed it there during the night. Again. Evelyn didn't comment on it. But she noticed. In the kitchen, Riley was unusually quiet while preparing breakfast. Normally she talked more. Today she kept stealing quick glances at Evelyn instead. Evelyn noticed immediately. Is there something on my face? Riley looked away quickly. No. You've looked at me 5 times in the last minute. Riley grabbed a plate. You're imagining things. Evelyn raised an eyebrow but didn't push further. After breakfast, they walked to the car together. Another normal morning. Another drop-off at the university. Except now it didn't feel strange anymore. It felt routine. At the campus gate, Riley stepped out of the car. Before closing the door, she said, "Did you sleep well?" Evelyn nodded. "Yes." "You didn't stay up working again?" "No." Riley looked satisfied. "Good." Then she paused. "Are you going to the gym again tonight?" Evelyn blinked slightly. "Why?" Riley shrugged. "Just asking." Evelyn studied her for a moment. "Yes." Riley nodded quickly. "Okay then." She shut the door and walked toward campus. Evelyn watched her go, slightly amused. That evening when Riley returned home, the lights were still on. Evelyn was at the desk again. But something felt slightly different tonight. She wasn't buried in paperwork. Instead, she looked like she was waiting. "You're early," Riley said. "I finished work earlier." Riley blinked. "Really?" "Yes." A small silence followed. Then Evelyn stood up. "I'm going to the gym." Riley nodded. "Okay." But as Evelyn walked toward the door, Riley spoke again. "Evelyn." She stopped. "Yes." Riley hesitated, then said casually, "Don't stay too long." Evelyn smiled slightly. "I won't." The door closed behind her. Riley sat on the couch, staring at the empty room. Her friend's words echoed in her head again. "You like her?" Riley shook her head. "That's ridiculous." But when she heard the door open again later that night, her eyes immediately looked up. And she realized something. She had been waiting. The house was quiet when Evelyn returned. The front door closed behind her with a soft click. The faint smell of soap and rain followed her inside from the night air. She had just come back from the gym, her body warm from exertion, hair slightly damp at the temples. The lights in the living room were still on. Riley was waiting. She sat cross-legged on the sofa with a book open on her lap, though she clearly hadn't been reading. Her eyes lifted the moment Evelyn stepped inside. "You're late," Riley said. Her voice sounded calm, but something in it carried a quiet edge. Evelyn slipped off her shoes. The gym was crowded. She rolled her shoulders slightly, stretching the tension from her muscles. The loose black tank top she wore clung faintly to her skin, and the movement made the muscles of her arms shift under the fabric. Riley noticed. Her gaze lingered longer than it should have. Evelyn walked past the couch toward the kitchen for water. "Did you eat?" she asked casually. Riley nodded. "I waited for you." That made Evelyn pause. She opened the refrigerator slowly and grabbed a bottle, trying to ignore the strange warmth creeping into her chest. When she turned back, Riley was still watching her. Not the normal curious look Riley gave her. Something quieter. Something heavier. Evelyn drank from the bottle, tilting her head back slightly. Riley's eyes followed the movement. When Evelyn finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and raised an eyebrow. "What?" Riley blinked quickly. "Nothing." But her cheeks had turned slightly pink. Evelyn walked toward the hallway. "I'm going to shower." Riley nodded again, lowering her gaze to the book she hadn't been reading. But she didn't turn the page. The sound of running water filled the bathroom. Riley tried to focus on her book. She read the same sentence 5 times and understood none of it. Her mind kept drifting back to the moment Evelyn walked in. Back to the way the gym clothes fit her. Back to the quiet strength in her movements. Riley pressed the book closed with a soft thud. "This is stupid," she muttered to herself. She stood up and walked to the kitchen instead, pretending to look for something to drink. But really, she was just restless. The bathroom door opened. Riley turned instinctively and immediately regretted it. Evelyn stepped out, hair damp, wearing loose gray sweatpants and a white t-shirt that clung slightly from the moisture of her shower. Riley froze. She hadn't realized how toned Evelyn was before. The gym clearly wasn't just a hobby. The shirt clung lightly to her shoulders and arms, and the faint outline of muscle moved every time she shifted. Riley quickly looked away. Too quickly. Evelyn noticed. Her lips curved slightly. "You okay?" Riley cleared her throat. "Yes. You look like you saw a ghost." "I didn't." Evelyn leaned against the kitchen counter, crossing her arms. "Then why are you red?" "I'm not." "You are." Riley glared at her. "You're annoying." Evelyn chuckled quietly. The sound was soft. Almost warm. Riley hated how much she liked it. She grabbed a glass of water, just to have something to do with her hands. The silence between them stretched, not uncomfortable, just heavy. Evelyn studied her for a moment. "You didn't sleep earlier," she said. Riley shrugged. "I had things to do." "You were waiting." Riley didn't answer. Evelyn stepped closer. Not too close, but close enough that Riley could feel the warmth of her presence. "You worry too much," Evelyn said quietly. Riley frowned. "Someone has to." "For what?" "For you." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Both of them froze. The room suddenly felt smaller. Evelyn's expression softened slightly. "You think I can't take care of myself?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Riley hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the glass. "You work too much." "That's normal." "No, it's not." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "And you're the expert?" Riley looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Riley said quietly, "I just don't want you collapsing again." Evelyn exhaled slowly. "I'm fine." "You always say that." "Because it's true." Riley stepped closer without realizing it. "You don't have to do everything alone." Evelyn looked down at her. Riley hadn't noticed how close she had moved. Now they were only inches apart. Close enough that Riley could see the tiny droplets of water still clinging to Evelyn's hair. Close enough that Evelyn could feel Riley's breath. The air between them shifted. Neither of them moved. Riley swallowed. Her heart suddenly beat faster. Evelyn's gaze dropped briefly to Riley's lips before returning to her eyes. Riley noticed. Her breath caught. Slowly, almost unconsciously, Riley leaned forward a little. Evelyn didn't move away. The space between them shrank. Closer. Closer. Riley's mind screamed at her to stop. But her body refused. Evelyn's hand lifted slightly. For a second, Riley thought she might touch her. Their faces were only inches apart now. Riley's heart pounded. The moment stretched. Then a loud notification sound burst from Evelyn's phone on the counter. Both of them jumped back instantly. Riley stepped away like she had touched fire. Evelyn grabbed the phone quickly, clearing her throat. "Work call," she said. Riley nodded too fast. "Right." Evelyn answered the phone, her voice shifting back into calm professionalism. "Yes." Riley stood there for a moment, staring at the floor. Her cheeks burned. Her heart still raced. What just happened? She didn't wait to hear the rest of the call. Riley turned and hurried down the hallway toward her room. Behind her, Evelyn watched quietly, still holding the phone, still listening to the business conversation. But her mind wasn't on it. Her gaze lingered on the empty hallway where Riley had disappeared. Her fingers brushed lightly against her own lips, almost unconsciously. Then she whispered under her breath, "Dangerous." Not Riley. The feeling, the quiet fire growing between them. The days after the almost kiss on the balcony and the almost something in the kitchen passed in a strange, suspended silence. Neither of them mentioned what had happened. Neither of them acknowledged the way their hands lingered when passing dishes, the way their eyes caught and held a moment too long. But something had shifted. Permanently. The house no longer felt like two strangers sharing space. It felt like two people waiting for something neither was brave enough to start. Then the rain came. It started suddenly. One moment the sky above the university was cloudy, the next it opened like a broken dam. Students ran across the courtyard, laughing and shouting, as water poured down the steps and across the stone paths. Under the entrance roof, Riley stood with her bag pressed against her chest. She sighed. Of course her umbrella was still at home. Around her, groups of students began leaving with friends. Some shared umbrellas. Some ran together through the rain. Riley stayed where she was. She pulled out her phone. For a moment she hesitated. Then she opened a message to Evelyn. Are you busy? 3 dots appeared almost immediately. No. She hesitated again, then typed, I'm stuck at the entrance. It's raining a lot. A pause. Then, stay there. I'm coming. Riley's heart jumped. 15 minutes later, a familiar car slowly pulled up near the entrance. Rain hammered against the windshield. Riley ran toward it. The moment she opened the door, warm air wrapped around her. Inside sat Evelyn. Calm. Composed. But her hair was slightly damp, like she had rushed. You could have waited until the rain stopped, Evelyn said. Riley shut the door quickly. It didn't look like it was going to stop today. Evelyn reached toward the back seat and pulled something forward. Her jacket. Without hesitation, she placed it around Riley's shoulders. The fabric was warm, still carrying Evelyn's faint scent. Riley froze slightly. You're soaked, Evelyn said. Riley looked down as water dripped from the ends of her hair onto the seat. Sorry. It's fine. But Evelyn gently adjusted the jacket around her anyway. The movement was careful. Soft. Riley's chest tightened. The car started moving. Outside, the rain blurred the city lights into long streaks of gold and white. Inside, silence grew. Not uncomfortable, just heavy. Riley finally spoke. Did I disturb you? No. You came quickly. Evelyn kept her eyes on the road. You asked. Riley looked at her. Do you always come when I ask? Evelyn's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Usually. Riley looked down at the jacket wrapped around her. Her fingers unconsciously moved toward Evelyn's sleeve. Then slowly, she grabbed the edge of Evelyn's shirt near her arm. Not tightly. Just lightly. Almost like she needed to hold on to something. Evelyn felt it immediately. Her breathing shifted slightly, but she didn't pull away. Riley, her voice was quieter now. Yes, you're holding my shirt. Riley didn't move her hand. I know. A long pause filled the car. Rain hit the roof harder. Evelyn finally asked softly, why? Riley didn't answer immediately. Her voice came out small. Because I wanted to. Evelyn's throat tightened. Riley spoke casually, trying to lighten the moment. I was actually waiting with my classmates before you came. Evelyn's grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly. Classmates. Riley leaned back, still wrapped in Evelyn's jacket. One of them even offered to walk me home. Evelyn's eyes flicked toward her for a second. And? Riley shrugged. I said no. Why? Riley smiled faintly. I told him someone was coming. Evelyn didn't respond immediately. The rain grew heavier. After a pause, she asked quietly, was he close to you? Riley blinked. Who? That classmate. Riley looked at her more carefully now. Why are you asking? Evelyn's voice stayed calm. Just asking. Riley tilted her head slightly. You sound annoyed. I'm not. You are. Evelyn exhaled slowly. I don't like the idea of you walking home with someone else. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Silence filled the car. Riley's heart skipped. You don't like it? She asked softly. Evelyn kept her eyes on the road. No. Riley leaned a little closer. Why? Evelyn didn't answer. Her jaw tightened slightly. Her fingers tapped once against the steering wheel, then stopped. The car slowed at a red light. Rain streaked down the glass between them and the world outside. Finally, Evelyn spoke. Quiet, controlled, but no longer distant. Because I don't like sharing what's mine. Riley froze. The words sank in slowly, deeply. Her grip on Evelyn's shirt tightened just a little more. Yours? She whispered. Riley's heartbeat quickened. You're jealous, she said softly. Evelyn exhaled slowly. I don't like the idea of someone else being close to you. Her voice was controlled, but thinner than before. More honest. Riley leaned a little closer. Then don't let them, she said gently. Evelyn's eyes darkened slightly. That's not how it works. Then how does it work? Riley asked. Evelyn didn't answer. Because she didn't have one. Not anymore. Riley. Evelyn's voice dropped. You shouldn't say things like that. Why? Evelyn finally turned toward her fully. Because you don't realize what it does. Riley didn't move away. Then show me. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. The light outside turned green again. Cars behind them started moving. But Evelyn didn't. For the first time, she let go of control. Her hand moved slowly from the steering wheel. It reached up and gently touched Riley's cheek. Warm. Steady. Riley's breath caught. Her grip on Evelyn's shirt tightened. Last chance, Evelyn whispered. To what? Riley asked softly. To stop this. Riley shook her head slightly. I don't want to. That was all it took. Evelyn closed the distance. This time, the kiss wasn't hesitant. It was still soft, but deeper. More certain. Her hand stayed against Riley's cheek, thumb brushing lightly against her skin. Riley leaned into it without thinking. Her fingers curled tighter into Evelyn's shirt. The world outside disappeared. Pulling her just a little closer, Riley's breath hitched softly against Evelyn's lips. The warmth between them grew. Slow. Building. Not rushed. Not overwhelming. Just real. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. The kiss shifted deeper, more certain now. The hesitation that once defined her was gone, replaced by something quieter but stronger. Riley melted into it. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing unevenly. The rain continued to hammer against the car, but neither noticed. Riley's forehead rested against Evelyn's. Her eyes were still closed. That, Riley whispered, was worth the wait. Evelyn's thumb brushed her cheek one more time. You're impossible. You started it. I know. For a moment, they stayed like that. Close. Tangled. The space between them gone. Then a car honked behind them. Evelyn blinked, suddenly remembering where they were. She pulled back slightly, clearing her throat. Her cheeks were faintly pink. Riley had never seen that before. The light is green, Riley said quietly, amused. Yes, I see that. Evelyn turned back to the wheel and drove. But her hand found Riley's and held it for the rest of the ride home. Neither of them let go. Morning came slowly. Riley woke up in her own bed, but something was different. The door between their rooms was open. It had never been open before. She sat up, stretching. The memory of last night flooded back. The rain. The car. The kiss. Her face warmed. She walked into the kitchen and found Evelyn already there, making coffee. She was wearing simple clothes, no blazer, no professional armor. Just a soft sweater and loose pants. Evelyn looked up. Their eyes met. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Evelyn said quietly, "Good morning." "Good morning," Riley replied. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged. Electric. Evelyn poured a second cup of coffee and slid it across the counter toward Riley. The gesture was so natural, so domestic, that Riley's chest ached. "Thank you," Riley said. "You're welcome." They stood on opposite sides of the kitchen island, drinking coffee, neither quite knowing what to say. The kiss hung between them like a question neither was ready to answer out loud. Finally, Riley set down her cup. "About last night." "Don't," Evelyn said softly. Riley blinked. "Don't?" Evelyn looked at her directly. "Don't apologize. Don't overthink it. Don't pretend it didn't happen." Riley's throat tightened. "I wasn't going to." "Good." Another pause. Then Riley asked, "What happens now?" Evelyn considered the question carefully. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I don't want to pretend anymore. Not at home." "At home?" "At university, we still have rules. Boundaries. I'm still your professor." Riley nodded slowly. "I know. But here," Evelyn set down her cup. "Here, I don't want to keep distance that doesn't exist anymore." Riley's heart swelled. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay. Yes. Okay." Evelyn's lips curved into a small smile. The first genuine, unguarded smile Riley had ever seen from her. Riley wanted to kiss her again. But she didn't. Instead, she reached across the counter and took Evelyn's hand. Evelyn let her. They stayed like that until the coffee grew cold. The peace lasted exactly 4 days. It was a Thursday afternoon. Riley had just finished her last class and was walking across the courtyard when she saw her. A woman. Elegant. Confident. Standing near the faculty building like she belonged there. She was talking to someone, and that someone was Evelyn. Riley slowed her steps. The woman stood close to Evelyn. Too close. She touched Evelyn's arm while laughing at something. Evelyn didn't immediately move away. Something sharp twisted in Riley's chest. She recognized the feeling now. Jealousy. She watched from behind a tree as the conversation continued. The woman's body language was familiar, too familiar. She leaned in, smiled, touched. Riley couldn't hear what they were saying. But she saw Evelyn's expression. Not annoyed. Not uncomfortable. Just calm. Like this was normal. Riley turned away before she could see more. Later that day, she asked one of the older faculty secretaries casually, "Who was that woman visiting Professor Vance?" The secretary glanced around before lowering her voice. "That's Natalie. She used to visit Professor Vance often a few years ago. They were close." Riley's stomach dropped. "Close how?" The secretary just smiled mysteriously and walked away. Close. The word echoed in Riley's mind all night. The next morning, Riley went to Evelyn's office during her free period. The door was slightly ajar. She pushed it open and froze. Natalie was inside, standing very close to Evelyn's desk, leaning over it. Her hand was on Evelyn's collar, adjusting it casually. From Riley's angle, it looked intimate. Very intimate. "Oh," Riley said flatly. Both women looked up. Evelyn's expression shifted immediately. "Riley, I just came to drop this off." Riley placed a paper bag on the nearest table, coffee, the usual. "I'll go." "Riley, wait." But Riley was already gone. She walked quickly down the hallway, her chest burning. She heard footsteps behind her. "Riley, stop." She didn't. Evelyn caught her wrist gently. "Would you please stop walking?" Riley turned. Her eyes were bright with emotion. "Who is she?" Evelyn exhaled slowly. "Someone from my past." "Your past?" "The secretary said you were close." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "We dated. A long time ago. Before I started teaching." Riley felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "You never told me." "It wasn't relevant." "She was touching your collar." "She was being annoying." Riley laughed bitterly. "She looked pretty comfortable with you." Evelyn's patience thinned. "Riley, Nothing is happening between Natalie and me. Nothing has happened for years. Then why is she here? Evelyn hesitated. Just for a second. But Riley saw it. She's here for business. Business? You're a professor. Evelyn looked at her for a long moment. Then she said something unexpected. Come home with me tonight. I'll explain everything. Riley crossed her arms. Everything. Everything. That evening, they sat in the living room. The house was quiet. The tension between them was not. Evelyn poured 2 glasses of wine. Riley accepted hers, but didn't drink. Start talking, Riley said. Evelyn leaned back on the couch. For the first time, she looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with work. Natalie and I met 7 years ago, she began. We were business partners. Riley frowned. Business partners? You're a professor. Evelyn met her eyes. I'm not just a professor. Riley waited. Evelyn set down her glass. I own a company. A large one. My family's business. I've been running it for 10 years. Riley blinked. You what? I teach because I love it. But the company is mine. I have a CEO who handles daily operations, but I make the final decisions. Riley stared at her. You're telling me you're a secret CEO? I'm not secret. I just don't advertise it. Riley set down her wine. Her brain was struggling to process. And Natalie? She was my partner. Both personally and professionally. Evelyn's voice hardened slightly. Until she chose a business deal over our relationship. She betrayed my trust. We ended things 5 years ago. So why is she here now? Evelyn's expression darkened. Because my company is expanding into a market she wants. She's working with a competitor now. She's not here for me. She's here to intimidate. To play games. Riley was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, why didn't you tell me any of this before? Because I didn't know how. Evelyn's voice softened. Because I've spent years not letting people close. And then you showed up. And suddenly I wanted to tell you everything, but I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid you'd look at me differently. Afraid you'd think I was hiding things on purpose. Afraid, she paused, that you'd leave. Riley's chest ached. You're an idiot, she said quietly. Evelyn blinked. What? A complete, brilliant, overworking idiot. Riley set down her glass and moved closer. I'm not going to leave because you have a company. I'm not going to leave because your ex is back in town. I'm not going to leave at all unless you give me a reason. Evelyn stared at her. And what reason would that be? Riley took her hand. Telling me you don't want me here. Silence. Then Evelyn lifted Riley's hand to her lips and kissed her knuckles softly. I want you here, she said. I've wanted you here since the night you put a blanket on me while I was asleep at my desk. Riley laughed softly. You were awake for that? Barely. But I remember. They sat in the quiet for a moment. Then Riley said, so, your ex is here to mess with your company. Yes. And she's been hanging around your office to mess with you. Probably. Riley nodded slowly. Then we need to mess with her back. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Riley smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I mean, if she wants to see us as a couple, let's give her a show. The university festival arrived at the end of the week. Music blasted from the central stage. Colorful lights hung between buildings. Food stalls lined the pathways. Students moved everywhere in groups, laughing loudly. Riley stood with her friends near the drink stalls, but her mind was elsewhere. She kept scanning the crowd. Looking for someone? Her best friend asked knowingly. No. You're lying. Riley didn't answer. Then she saw her. Evelyn. Standing near the faculty booth. Talking to someone. Natalie. Riley's jaw tightened. But this time, she didn't walk away. She took a breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked straight toward them. Professor Vance, Riley said, her voice sweet. Evelyn looked up. Surprise flickered across her face, then understanding. Miss Chin, Evelyn replied formally. Natalie watched the exchange with sharp, curious eyes. Riley stepped closer to Evelyn. Closer than a student should stand to a professor. I was wondering if you'd save me a dance later. Evelyn's composure flickered. A dance? For the opening ceremony. Faculty and students. Riley smiled. Tradition, right? Natalie's eyebrows rose. Evelyn's lips curved slightly. I suppose tradition is important. Very important, Riley agreed. Natalie cleared her throat. I didn't realize professors danced with students at this university. Some do, Riley said, not looking at her. Especially when they're married to them. The word landed like a bomb. Natalie's eyes widened. She looked at Evelyn. Married? Evelyn's expression was calm, but her eyes held a quiet satisfaction. Yes, Riley is my wife. Natalie stared for a long moment. Then she laughed, a sharp, surprised sound. Well, that's certainly unexpected. Is it? Riley tilted her head. Why? Because you thought she'd still be waiting for you. The silence that followed was absolute. Natalie's smile faded. You're bold. I'm honest, Riley replied. There's a difference. Evelyn placed a gentle hand on Riley's arm. Riley. But her voice wasn't scolding. It was warm. Almost proud. Natalie looked between them, something shifting in her expression. I see. She stepped back. Well, I should go. I have calls to make. She walked away without looking back. Riley watched her go. When Natalie was out of sight, she let out a long breath. That was terrifying, she admitted. Evelyn laughed softly. You were magnificent. I was shaking inside. I couldn't tell. Riley looked up at her. Did I overstep? Evelyn considered. Then she shook her head. No. She needed to hear it. And I. She paused. I liked hearing you say it. Say what? That you're my wife. Riley's heart fluttered. Well, it's true. Yes, Evelyn said quietly. It is. The music swelled around them. Students danced. Lights flashed. But Riley only saw Evelyn. About that dance, Riley said. You're serious. Completely. Evelyn hesitated. Then she held out her hand. Riley took it. They walked onto the edge of the dance floor together, professor and student, wife and wife. People stared, whispered, but neither of them cared. For the first time, Evelyn Vance danced in public. And for the first time, Riley Chin didn't feel like she was pretending. They left the festival early. The house was dark when they arrived. Neither turned on the lights. In the living room, moonlight streamed through the windows, painting everything silver. Riley stood near the couch, her heart pounding. Evelyn stood across from her, close enough to touch. That was reckless tonight, Evelyn said softly. Which part? All of it. Riley stepped closer. Are you angry? Evelyn shook her head slowly. No, I'm not angry. Then what are you? Evelyn reached out. Her fingers brushed Riley's cheek. I'm tired of holding back. Riley's breath caught. Then don't. Evelyn kissed her. Not soft this time. Not hesitant. Deep. Certain. Hungry. Riley's hands tangled in Evelyn's hair. Evelyn's arms wrapped around Riley's waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened. Slowed. Became something else entirely, something neither of them had words for. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Bedroom, Riley whispered. Evelyn nodded. They didn't make it to separate rooms that night. They didn't sleep in separate beds. And when morning came, neither of them pretended anything had changed. Because everything had. Riley woke slowly. Sunlight streamed through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, She didn't know where she was. Then she felt it, an arm wrapped around her waist. Warm breath against her neck. Evelyn's bedroom. Riley's face warmed as memories flooded back. The kiss. The way Evelyn had looked at her. The way they'd. She buried her face in the pillow. "You're awake." Evelyn's voice came from behind her, husky with sleep. "Maybe," Riley mumbled. Evelyn laughed softly. The sound vibrated against Riley's back. "Maybe? I'm still processing." Evelyn propped herself up on one elbow. Riley turned over slowly. Evelyn's hair was messy. Her face was soft, no armor, no composure. Just Evelyn. Riley's heart squeezed. "Hi," Riley whispered. "Hi," Evelyn replied. They stared at each other. "So," Riley said. "So, this is weird," Evelyn offered. "I was going to say nice. But weird works too." Evelyn smiled. A real smile. "Nice is better." Riley reached out and touched Evelyn's face. Her thumb traced Evelyn's cheekbone. "I meant what I said yesterday. At the festival." "Which part?" "All of it. But especially the part about you being my wife." Evelyn's expression softened. "I meant what I said too. About not wanting to pretend anymore." "Good. Good." They lay there for a long time, tangled together, neither wanting to move. Finally, Evelyn sighed. "We have to go to campus." "I know. People will talk. After last night." "Let them." Riley pressed closer. "I don't care." Evelyn looked at her carefully. "You might. Eventually. Then I'll deal with it eventually." Riley kissed her softly. "Right now, I just want to stay here." Evelyn kissed her back. "That can be arranged." They were late to campus that morning. Very late. Neither of them minded. Things changed after that. Not dramatically, not in ways that outsiders would notice. At university, Evelyn was still Professor Vance. Still composed. Still precise. But Riley noticed the small things. The way Evelyn's eyes found her in a crowded lecture hall. The way her voice softened just slightly when answering Riley's questions. The way she would text during the day, simple messages. "Did you eat? Don't forget your umbrella. I'm thinking about you." At home, the changes were bigger. They no longer slept in separate rooms. The second bedroom became a study, Evelyn's study, because Riley insisted she needed space to work. They cooked together. Argued about movies. Left notes for each other on the refrigerator. Riley learned that Evelyn was an insomniac who drank coffee at midnight and read financial reports in bed. Evelyn learned that Riley was a blanket hog who talked in her sleep and always stole the last bite of dessert. They were learning each other. Not as professor and student. Not as strangers bound by contract. As wives. 2 weeks later, Evelyn's childhood friends demanded another dinner. "You've been hiding your wife," one accused. "I have not." "You have. Bring her." Evelyn sighed. "She's a student. She's your wife. That's more important." So Riley came. She sat beside Evelyn at the restaurant, surrounded by women who had known Evelyn for 20 years. They asked questions, dozens of them. "How did you meet?" "We don't talk about that." "When did you know?" "We're still figuring that out." "Are you happy?" "Yes." That last answer made Evelyn's friends exchange looks. "The professor is smiling," one whispered loudly. "I've never seen that before." "Is that legal?" Riley laughed. Evelyn rolled her eyes. But she was smiling too. Later, when the others were distracted, one of Evelyn's oldest friends pulled Riley aside. "Take care of her," she said quietly. Riley nodded. "I will. She doesn't let people in." "You must be special." "I don't know about special." "She works too hard. Forgets to eat. Forgets to sleep. Don't let her do that." Riley smiled. "I've noticed. I'm working on it." The friend studied her for a moment. Then she nodded, satisfied. "Good. You're good for her. Riley looked across the room at Evelyn, laughing at something another friend said, relaxed in a way Riley had never seen before. I hope so, Riley said softly. Natalie showed up one more time. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Riley was walking to Evelyn's office when she saw her standing in the hallway waiting. Natalie, Riley said flatly. Riley. Natalie's smile was thin. I was hoping to catch you. Why? Natalie stepped closer. To apologize. Riley blinked. What? I was unkind. At the festival. I came back to the city with intentions that weren't entirely honest. I wanted to disrupt things. To remind Evelyn of what we had. She paused. But I saw her with you. And I realized she's different now. Riley didn't speak. Evelyn doesn't dance, Natalie continued. She never danced. Not with me. But she danced with you. In front of everyone. Natalie's smile turned rueful. That's not something you can compete with. Riley's chest ached, but not from jealousy. From something else. Understanding, maybe. She's happy, Natalie said. I've never seen her happy before. So, I'm leaving. Going back to the city where I actually live. I won't bother you again. Riley studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Thank you. Natalie laughed softly. Don't thank me. Just take care of her. Everyone keeps telling me that. Because she needs to hear it. Even if she won't admit it. Natalie walked away. Riley stood in the hallway for a moment, processing. Then she opened Evelyn's office door. Evelyn looked up. You're late. Natalie was here. Evelyn's expression hardened. What did she want? To apologize. And to leave. Evelyn blinked. Leave? She said you're different now. Happier. Riley walked to the desk and sat on the edge. She's not wrong, is she? Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then she shook her head. No. She's not wrong. Riley leaned down and kissed her forehead. Good. The weeks that followed were quiet. Not boring, just peaceful. They fell into a rhythm. Mornings together. Coffee. Sometimes Evelyn made breakfast. Sometimes Riley did. They drove to campus together, parking in the faculty lot, Riley getting out near the gate. Some students had noticed. A few whispered. Most didn't care. At home, they built a life. Riley learned that Evelyn was secretly addicted to terrible reality TV shows. Evelyn learned that Riley sang loudly in the shower badly. They argued about whose turn it was to do dishes. They compromised by doing them together. They celebrated small things. Riley's A on a difficult exam. Evelyn finishing a quarter-end report without collapsing from exhaustion. They fought sometimes small fights. About work-life balance. About Evelyn staying up too late. About Riley not asking for help when she needed it. But they always made up. And every night, they fell asleep in the same bed. One night, lying in the dark, Riley spoke. Evelyn. Are we going to tell people? Officially? Evelyn was quiet for a moment. What do you mean? I mean, I'm graduating in a few months. After that, you won't be my professor anymore. Riley turned to face her. Do we stay married? For real? Evelyn turned as well. In the darkness, Riley could barely see her face, but she could feel her gaze. Riley. Yes. I stopped pretending this was temporary a long time ago. Riley's heart soared. Then why haven't you said anything? Because I wanted you to be sure. This isn't a small thing. I'm older. I'm your professor for now. My life is complicated. Evelyn's voice softened. I didn't want you to feel trapped. Riley reached out and took her hand. I've never felt trapped. Not once. Not even at the beginning? Okay, maybe at the beginning. Riley laughed softly. But not since. I don't know. Since the lunchbox? Since you started noticing when I didn't eat? Evelyn squeezed her hand. I noticed before that. You did. I noticed you the first day of class. Third row. Always paying attention. Always asking good questions. Evelyn paused. I noticed you long before the wedding. Riley's breath caught. Why didn't you say anything? Because you were my student. Because it would have been inappropriate. Because I told myself it was nothing. Evelyn's thumb traced circles on Riley's hand. I was wrong. Riley leaned closer. So was I. What do you mean? I told myself you were just my professor. Just my roommate. Just someone I was married to on paper. Riley kissed her softly. I was wrong too. They lay there, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. After you graduate, Evelyn said quietly, will you stay? I'm already staying. I mean, will you stay because you want to? Not because of the contract. Not because of obligation. Just because. Riley smiled in the darkness. Yes. Yes. Yes, Evelyn. I'll stay. I want to stay. I want to wake up next to you and argue about dishes and steal your food and make sure you don't work yourself to death. She kissed Evelyn again. I want all of it. Evelyn's arms wrapped around her, pulling her close. Good, Evelyn whispered. Because I want all of it too. 3 months later, Riley graduated. She walked across the stage in her cap and gown, diploma in hand. Her parents cheered from the audience. Her friends screamed. And in the front row, Evelyn Vance sat with the other faculty members, composed, professional, proud. Their eyes met as Riley crossed the stage. Evelyn smiled. Not a small smile. Not a controlled smile. A real one. Full and bright and unguarded. Riley's heart nearly burst. After the ceremony, they found each other near the back of the crowd. No students around. No faculty. Congratulations, Mrs. Vance, Evelyn said softly. Riley laughed. Mrs. Vance? That's still weird to hear. Get used to it. Riley wrapped her arms around Evelyn's neck. Now that I'm not your student anymore. Yes, I can do this in public. She kissed her. Right there. In front of everyone. A few people gasped. A few applauded. Most just smiled and looked away. When they pulled apart, Evelyn's cheeks were pink. Your trouble, Evelyn said. You love it. Evelyn sighed. I love you. Riley's breath caught. Say that again. I love you, Riley Chin Vance. Riley's eyes filled with tears. I love you too. I've loved you since the rain. Maybe before. Evelyn pulled her close. I've loved you since the night you put a blanket on me while I was working. That was before the rain. I know. They stood there, holding each other, as the graduation crowd swirled around them. Epilogue. 1 year later. The house was the same, but everything else had changed. Riley worked now, a junior analyst at a firm across the city. Evelyn still taught, still ran her company, still worked too much. But she worked less. Riley made sure of it. They had a routine now. Real one. Mornings, coffee together. Evelyn read the news. Riley scrolled through her phone. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just existed in the same space, comfortable. Evenings, dinner together. Most nights. Sometimes late when work ran over. But always together. Weekends, lazy. Sleeping in. Cooking elaborate breakfasts. Arguing about what to watch. They had friends now, couple friends. Other women who loved women. Dinners. Parties. Laughter. Evelyn's childhood friends had adopted Riley as one of their own. The professor's wife, they called her. Riley wore the title like a badge of honor. One night, sitting on the couch, Riley looked around the living room. The photos on the wall, them at graduation. Them at a friend's wedding. Them on a trip to the mountains. The blanket on the couch, the one Riley had draped over Evelyn's shoulders that first night. The kitchen, where they cooked together. The bedroom, where they slept tangled together every night. Hey, Riley said. Evelyn looked up from her book. We built this. Evelyn set down the book. Built what? Our life. This. Us. Riley gestured around the room. It started as a contract. An obligation. Two strangers who didn't even want to share a room. Evelyn smiled softly. And now? Now I can't imagine sleeping anywhere else. Evelyn reached over and took her hand. Neither can I. Riley leaned against her shoulder. Do you ever think about what would have happened if our families hadn't arranged this? Every day, Evelyn admitted. And? Evelyn was quiet for a moment. I think I would have noticed you anyway. Maybe not as quickly. Maybe not the same way. But I think we would have found each other. Riley looked up at her. You really believe that? I do. Riley kissed her soft, slow, familiar. The kind of kiss that came from a year of practice. A year of learning each other. A year of love. I believe it too, Riley whispered. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, the house was quiet, filled with the comfortable silence of two people who had finally stopped pretending. Two women. Two wives. Still teasing. Still laughing. Still falling in love with each other every single day. And neither of them would have changed a single thing. The end.